Hey, I'm Mark Riddles. I'm here to talk about my loss of riding a motorbike following a crash which happened last year.
Welcome to The Silent Why, a podcast with a mission to find 101 different types of loss and to hear from those who've experienced them. This is Loss 39. I'm Claire Sands.
And I'm my husband Chris, and in this episode we're talking about a subject that we've enjoyed a lot over the years, motorbikes.
And it's not just the bikes we love, it's also the accent.
Mark actually asked us after our chat if we think he sounds Irish, and we were like, yes, it's so good. Just like occasionally we have American guests saying that about our English accents.
Mark lives in Northern Ireland and has loved bikes for as long as he can remember.
My head was literally always thinking about bikes all the time. I don't know if it was an unhealthy addiction, but I just loved bikes all the time. YouTube, motorbikes. It was crazy.
Mark was and still is a huge bike enthusiast. In fact, he had two of them, but he made a big decision to sell both after a nasty accident at relatively low speed.
As they say, a bike on the road is worth two in the shed.
I was just going 30-45 miles an hour, as I said, and she just suddenly pulled out and hit me. The right side of my bike sort of hit her, and I kind of saw her, and when she hit me, I was like, no. That's all I remember shouting in my helmet.
If you've not experienced being on a motorbike, it's worth noting the level of enjoyment in riding and the huge community that's built around it. As they also say, 4 wheels move the body, 2 wheels move the soul.
It's just freedom. In a car, you're kind of in a box. But on a bike, you're open to everything, and it's a lot more body focused. You know, everything you do has an effect to the bike.
We're keen to represent all kinds of loss on this podcast, and in this chat we uncovered some fascinating aspects of a permanent loss that was partly chosen, but also one that most people were pleased about, which adds a new dimension to grieving it.
Yeah, how do you process the loss of something you love that other people are glad is gone, or wanted you to lose? How do you support someone through a loss that you're relieved about?
We hope this chat will help people be more considerate of losses that might be hard to comprehend if we don't understand them, but ultimately still involve someone's personal grief.
Apart from you guys, I've never really been asked, is it like a loss or anything? It's kind of just like, well, don't do it again because it's dangerous. You might kill yourself next time.
So let's get going. Mark started off by telling us a bit about himself.
Yep, I'm Mark Riddles. I'm 31 years old. I live in Bangor, Northern Ireland. I have 2 kids and a wife. I work in a care home 5 days a week. I am a chef in a care home, so I look after about 34 residents, just supply them with meals and just help in general everyday help with them really in food areas really. My work is only about 10 minutes down the road, so everything close to me is, ideal. My family's close to me. My wife's family's close to me, so everything's kind of, close.
I'm imagining being a chef outside of a care home, you get lots of praise, lots of criticism. Do you get lots of praise and criticism from being a chef inside a care home?
I would say sometimes from the staff, they're kind of like, oh, you should make this better, or the residents is like, oh, that's really, really good. We really enjoy that, which I get a good kick out of that. I just like helping the older generation because they have so much experience. And they've lived through so much more than we have, so...
Yeah, for sure. So, this is going to be a really interesting chat for us because it's a bit different. I'm really excited to speak to you because we share an interest of something in particular. So tell us a little bit about the hobby or the transport that you have loved up until recently.
So I started loving motorbikes, probably when I was about 16. So I got a wee 50cc supermoto and I drove it to tech every day, and then after that I got an off-road dirt bike, so I did a bit of off-roading, and then after that I got a mini moto, like the miniature sized motorbikes, which are like a lawnmower engine, and then after that I got a car license, which took me away from bikes for many years, and then all down to my brother-in-law, who is a mad biker. He's fanatical about motorbikes. He got me back into bikes. And he was kind of like, your motorbike license so easy to get. So I was like, oh, how do you get it? And he told me the whole rigmarole he had to go through. And I was like, I'm going to do that. So I went and got my proper motorbike license. And yeah, I just love being on the bikes. And I used to have a Bandit 650. And then I went up to the top range pretty much. So I went up to a Fireblade. And then I had a Kawasaki Z900. So yeah, I had 2 pretty fast bikes.
Envious.
Nice. I think I've sat on one of them at the MotoGP where they've got them on stands and you
Yeah.
can just jump on and just, I think
Yeah.
I've been on the Fireblade a couple of times.
Certainly.
So I blame my brother-in-law for the love of bikes.
Well, it's quite an interesting progression because you sort of started small,
Yeah.
50cc, then went off-road, then went to a mini moto, and then up. So it's sort of been a bit all over the place.
Yeah. It definitely has.
Obviously, with the experience of off-road biking, but then getting into it properly on the road with some quite fast bikes. What were some of the things you enjoyed the most about being out on the road on a bike, sun shining, whatever else?
Going out, clearing the head, just you on the road pretty much. I always love going out with other people as well. It was kind of like it was just good fun to go out with friends and have the same interest. And, when you stop for a coffee or something, you can all just talk about bikes. I just love being surrounded by people just talking about bikes all day, every day. I could do it. I had such a love for it. Meet new people as well. It was such a blessing to go and see new people and have the same interests and give my knowledge of bikes to them and vice versa. So I just loved that.
We didn't do a lot of the community side of it, but I do remember meeting a few people. And like you said, when you've got that interest in common, it's amazing how quickly you connect. And I loved how they were all interested in each other's bikes. So people always wandering around other people's bikes to have a look at them. And
yeah, I love that. Yeah, I absolutely love that.
Was this something your wife shared as like a bit of a hobby or interest? Was she supportive of it?
No, she hated them from day one. She absolutely hates them. She always respected me, and you go and do your man time and go and do your own thing, sort of thing. But obviously, when the accident happened, she was kind of like, maybe you should lay off the motorbikes. And she never really liked them, but obviously, when the accident happened, she really disliked them then. So that was a big sort of part to play in it as well, I suppose. But no, she never got on the back or anything.
Because for me, in my experience, I got into biking off-road growing up. We had a farm, 7 of us cousins, old boys, all similar age, with grandparents' farm, had a little car, had a couple of bikes, loved it. And then got into riding on the road only when I was like late 20s, I think. Because I was that age, I went quite sort of straight in at learning, passing a test within 4 days, quite an intensive course, then up to a 500cc and then up to a 1000cc after that. But it was something that Claire always loved as well. So the two of us, without having children, it became not just riding, but watching it on the telly as well. We'd watch the MotoGP, we'd go to our sort of Silverstone racetrack in England. We just loved being part of that world. We dreamt at times of actually working in the MotoGP world and travelling the world, thinking, well, why not? Because we haven't got kids. It's lovely for the pair of us to share that, even though Claire has never wanted to ride. If you didn't mind being on the back.
No, I was quite happy on the back, really. The occasional time we were with a lot of bikes together, it was always nice if a female turned up.
Yeah.
Or there was another pillion there, because otherwise I was in the minority. I knew more women like your wife, who just didn't even like the idea that I would let you go out on one because of the, it's seen as so dangerous, isn't it? So I think it is something that people have got kind of a caution mark over.
Yeah, especially on the roads today. I think there's a lot more cars than there used to be. Like if I went out for a ride for 2 hours, 3 hours, you're exhausted at the end of it because you're so concentrating all the time on other people. As my granddad used to say, drive like everyone else is a maniac, you know what I mean? So you just have to be on the ball all the time. And in a car, you can kind of relax, stick in cruise control on the highway, whatever. On the bike, it's, the wind is hitting you, and it's concentration at the highest degree at all times.
Yeah, I think it's worse watching it as well. I remember being on it on a motorway and not thinking a lot about it apart from how fast it felt. But then I remember driving home behind you once on the bike, and I really did not like watching you on it. It was weird. It's a different sort of feeling if you haven't been on one yourself. I think I can see why people get nervous about that.
Not that I want to set up the accident or anything or cast any aspersions, but because the bikes you rode were quite, crouch over sports bikes.
Yeah.
You cut through the air, you can't feel the speed. What's the fastest you've been on one of your bikes?
The Fireblade, about 150.
Oh my word! Did it feel like you were doing 150?
It did. It was fast because I overtook a friend and I left him and he was going pretty fast. But I kind of looked at the speedo and I saw 150, and the revs were only like 9,000 revs, so the bike could have went way quicker. I was like, at the back of my mind, the kids always come back to my mind. It's always the kids. If something happens to me, what about the kids? What about the kids and my wife and stuff? If I had a stone at that speed, I'm a goner. Yeah. So it was always in the back of my mind. I love the speed, but only for a short time.
I remember them saying about the MotoGP riders sometimes that the minute they have children, quite a lot of them drop off from being competitive because there's something mentally that just stops you at that point from pushing it to the very
Yeah,
edge.
100%.
What was the worst bit about riding it? What's the bad side of biking?
When you get wet. The wet roads, the white markings. See, I used mine every day. I didn't have a car, so I had two motorbikes, and my wife had the car, so she obviously needed the car with the kids. So I was using the bike pretty much in every weather, which I kind of regret now because, go back to the accident again, if I was in a car, it wouldn't have happened, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I think I used the bike too much. I was too fixated on the bike, and my head was literally always thinking about bikes all the time. I don't know if it was an unhealthy addiction, but I just loved bikes all the time. YouTube, motorbikes, motorbikes. It was crazy.
YouTube has certainly opened up a world of watching other people's misfortune on motorbikes.
Yes, definitely.
My brother was into motorbikes as well, and he had a really lovely Triumph. This is not an uncommon story, but he had just put new tyres on it. Now, those that have never ridden a motorbike won't know how perilous it is when you've put new tyres on a motorbike.
Yep.
And they have that sort of waxy sheen that you got to scrub the tyres and you got to ride it in before you get grip. And I think he literally, and there are YouTube videos of people doing the same thing, he turned one corner, leaving the bike garage where it had two new tyres put on, and dropped it. And it just went straight down. The wheels slipped out.
Oh, no.
I think he walked it just straight back in.
He walked it straight back and sold it to them. I think he pretty much wrote it off.
Wow. That's what the guy said to me. I got new tires on the Fireblade,
Ooh,
and he was like, "Don't pull the throttle too hard, or don't go around the corner too quick, or whatever." So I was going very slow on the way home.
Just describe for those that haven't ever ridden a motorbike, describe the feelings, what you do, the sensations. What is it like actually being aboard a motorbike?
It's just freedom. In a car, you're kind of in a box, but on a bike, you're open to everything. And it's a lot more body focused. Everything you do has an effect to the bike. So as I said before, your concentration levels are so high, and obviously the speed, overtaking someone, you kind of feel you're in the MotoGP sort of thing. But it's just the freedom, I think, not having a metal box around you. So that's what I loved about it.
So tell us a bit about what led up to you having to give this up then. What actually happened on that day?
Yeah, so the day I was just going to see my mother and father. They live about 10 minutes from my house. Just going down the road, there was roadworks previous to where I was coming up to. And just going down the road, 35 miles an hour, there was a woman in the central turning point or whatever to the petrol station. And I saw her. She was sitting. I was just going 35 miles an hour, as I said, and she just suddenly pulled out and hit me. The right side of my bike sort of hit her, and I kind of saw her. And when she hit me, I was like, no, no, no. That's all I remember shouting in my helmet. And once she hit me, I did a 360 spin, flew down the road. The bike went down the road, and I went flying into a lamppost. My ankle hit the lamppost. The bike was off the road down somewhere. So once that happened, I was lying there. She got out of the car. She jumped over, ran over to me, and was like, "Oh, I didn't see you. I didn't see you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And then, since it was right outside a petrol station, there was a lot of people witnessed it. So there was a builder who jumped out of his van and he ran over to me. I think he was a painter, and he had loads of sheets, big painting sheets you put over the houses when you're painting them. So he covered me in sheets because it was freezing at this point. The shock, your body just goes into complete shock. You're like, what on earth just happened? And I was literally just lying there, and then I lay there for 15, 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, and then the police showed up. They kind of cleared the road, and then the ambulance showed up, and then I saw a helicopter fly over, and I was like, no way, that's for me. And it landed in behind the petrol station. And the air ambulance was there for me too. And I was like, oh, what have I done? What have I broke? What have I, the adrenaline and all was going, and I was in shock. So I didn't feel any pain really. So I was just lying there in disbelief, thinking, could I have done something to avoid this? You always think to yourself, it's never going to happen to you. And when it does, you're like, what? Yeah, complete disbelief. It was just crazy.
What were the kind of emotions you were going through as you started to sort of come round and realise what had happened?
Yeah, I kind of thought, will I be able to walk? Will I be able to... I don't know. See, I didn't know what I had broken. I hadn't a clue. It was complete shock. I didn't know. I was just in disbelief. One of my thoughts came into my head was, what about work tomorrow? You know what I mean? Because it was off a day, and then I was supposed to be back to work, I think, the next day. So I was like, do I have to use annual leave for this, or what am I what am I doing?
We've had that a few times, haven't we?
Yeah.
That you know, in those moments of shock, some strange thoughts about stuff that's quite insignificant
Yeah.
comes to mind.
Quite practical things. So what were your injuries? What had happened?
I broke my ankle, broke my hand, so I kind of hit the dirt, and then my helmet flew off down the road. So I had a big cut up the side of my face as well. I think it protected the first sort of crash, but afterwards it flew off because maybe I was rolling or something, but it's hard to remember. So yeah, cuts and bruises everywhere pretty much.
When you said you were only literally going 10, 15 minutes away to visit your parents, the tricky thing is, and I found this when I was riding as well, that when you are doing something that's quite short, you tend to think it's not as important to put all my gear on. So
Yes, yes.
were you fully decked up in your safety stuff or
I
not?
was. I kind of had my all-weather gear on. I had a full racing suit, which I wasn't wearing that day. Plus, I had shoes on that didn't protect the ankle overly well. So if I had proper boots on, it might have saved my ankle. I'm not, who knows. But yeah, I probably could have been wearing slightly better gear, I suppose. A better helmet as well, because I was kind of wearing my old helmet, which didn't fit overly. It fit, it had a good fit, but my other helmet was like a lot tighter, so it would have been a lot better. But sure, you only think you're going 10, 15 minutes down the road, oh, nothing's going to happen,
Nothing's going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, helmets shouldn't fly off.
No, they shouldn't. No,
They should
I know.
not fly off.
I know.
Was that did the strap break?
Yes, I think it did at the time. Yeah, I think it kind of ripped out, sort of thing.
So, you know, you mentioned the love of riding is all about freedom. So one minute you've got the freedom, the joy. The next minute you've got loads of people around you saying, "Don't move, you're right. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Stay with
yes.
us." All that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
A very different experience. Can you remember how long it was before you felt pain, before the shock wore off and you started to feel the discomfort or the pain?
Yes. I think when the air ambulance landed, the guys came over. He was like a high flying doctor. I don't know who he was really, a surgeon, whatever, a paramedic person. So he came over and he was asking me, "Do you have any other, like things wrong with you?" So I'm type 1 diabetic. So I'm insulin dependent. So yeah, I was kind of like, "Oh no, if my bloods are low, it's going to be my fault." So that was in the back of my head as well. I was like thinking, I'm going to get the blame for this. But they checked my bloods and they were 5.4, so they were fine. It was nothing to do with me. So that was a get out of jail card sort of thing. Once they sorted me out, took my bloods, they cut all the gear off me. The scissors, just took a scissors to everything. So I was literally in my tracksuit bottoms at the end of it. They just cut every single bit off me because they didn't want to move me because they don't know what I'd broken and so on. And then I started to feel the pain once they put me in the back of the ambulance when I kind of calmed down. And then the ambulance driver was like, "What's sore?" And I was like, "My hand and my ankle." So yeah, that's where the pain sort of started to hit me then.
How long were you in hospital for?
I was there overnight, and then I got out the next late evening. Well, late evening as in 7, 8 o'clock. And then I was at home for 2 days. And then they called me back in again because they wanted to do surgery on me, on my ankle. So they called me back in, and as being a diabetic, if anything bad happens to you, your bloods are all over the place. You can't control your bloods, and they look for that when you're in hospital. They look for, they're not going to perform surgery on the diabetic who has bad bloods, like up and down. And so they kind of looked at my bloods and they were like, "Yeah, you're not suitable for surgery." So they kept me overnight to see if my bloods would settle, and they didn't. So they sent me home again, and then 3 days later they brought me in again. So yeah, it was a lot of to and froing, and then they finally done the surgery on me.
So I'm guessing at this point, the last thing on your mind is getting back on a bike because you're trying to heal and get better and stuff. So at what point did you start thinking about whether that would happen or might not happen?
Yeah, I think the first night I was in like the access emergency a bit, just sort of lying there thinking, yeah, it just, I don't know, a real sense of don't do this again sort of thing. I was praying about it and thinking, God, was it me? Was it my fault? Did I do something stupid? But I kind of got a peace thinking, it wasn't my fault, which was really beneficial. Just got a real sense of, there's more to life than this. That was kind of, it kept on coming over me. So, and as I've said previous, I'm a big gamer, so I was kind of drop one hobby, go to another. So that's what, yeah. I think guys have to have hobbies, so I kind of went from one hobby to another. So
How did it feel knowing that this might be something that you would never do again?
yeah, it felt bad because I have such a love for motorbikes and stuff. I always always had from a young age, and yeah, it was kind of like all the knowledge and all the magazines I've bought and all the gear, and sure, I had another bike sitting there, brand new, pretty much, just sitting there, ready to go. And I was kind of like, man, this sucks, but I had to think of my family. I just had to keep thinking about my family and stuff. So
In terms of the surgery that you've had, because you've got a metal plate now in one of your ankles, is that right?
yeah, 4 screws as well. Yeah.
Is that there forever?
Yeah, that's for forever. Yeah, unless it gives me bother down the line, the surgeon said that's going to be there forever.
Do they impact you, or have they stopped you doing anything aside from the motorbiking?
Yeah, well, we have a big trampoline at the back of our house, which I can't go on with the kids now. I can't bounce like with the kids, and a lot of things. I still go running, which is still pretty good. I'm pleased I can still do that, but I can't walk for long periods because my ankle is still swollen to this day after the accident. So I don't know if that swelling will ever go away. And the doctor said about arthritis maybe down the line. God forbid that happens, but yeah, I'm very cautious with the ankle. When the kids are running and jumping and stuff, they're always like, "Oh, Daddy, sorry about the ankle," and I have a massive scar there too. So it's very noticeable, and yeah, I can't do everything that I used to do. I was very active, and if you'd like jump over a wall or something, playing football or tackling, playing football with friends and stuff, I'm a lot more cautious now.
It sounds like you need to join the early 40s club that I'm in. You don't jump over walls. You slowly climb over them.
Yeah.
At my age, I left that behind.
It's funny, it hits me that, part of why we wanted to do the podcast was to show all the different kinds of losses, but not just how one loss might be to somebody, but how it depends on your situation as to how big that loss impacts you. And like you said, you get to spend more time with your family, you get to drive around in the car, you get to do these other things. But then if you'd have been a single guy maybe,
Yeah.
and you could have got straight back on the bike, then you probably would have done, because that might have been a massive chunk of your life. So that loss would have been possibly even bigger because there's nothing to fill that gap with. But it strikes me that people would have more sympathy with the trampoline situation than losing your bike, because that involves family and children and not being able to engage with them, and yet the loss of that in your life overall will be significantly smaller than the bike bit. But because the bikes are dangerous, it's not necessarily seen in the same way, which is sad really. But I feel like I'm glad there are people like you out there, because I know that if you come across someone else who can't ride a bike, that might be a conversation where you really can understand and empathise with that person.
Yeah.
And help them in a way that no one else really can, because a lot of people just don't understand it. Is that something that you think you'd take a lot of enjoyment in some way, that you might be able to help someone else where it might be a bigger loss for them?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I work in a care home, so any way I can help people, I'm always there. Kind of a helping person, in any way if I can help people with, if that ever happened to anyone else, I'd be 100% up for helping people. Yeah, definitely. I like to share life experiences with people, so that's what life's about. You have to learn from each other, so yeah.
So in terms of not continuing motorbiking, is that something that you've chosen to do, or that you're sort of there's no way it could happen? Could you ride again?
Strictly speaking, I could ride again, yeah. I don't know, obviously, with the clutch, with my, going up the gears and down the gears with my left foot, might be a bit of an issue. I haven't obviously tried since I've had the accident, but it's the whole, how would I react to it? Would I be overly cautious and do something stupid? Or, because just me driving a car now, I'm a lot more cautious. When I was on the bike, I was quite a fast rider, and now I'm not. So, yeah, it's kind of zonked my confidence.
Having experienced that at 30, 35 miles per hour, no doubt you've thought many times, what would that have been like at 50, at 70, at 90, at 110? Not so much coming off the bike, but when you hit something like a lamppost, quite often you'll hear that can cause even more damage than the falling off the bike, getting hit in the first place. And obviously your ankle got the full brunt of hitting the lamppost. But I mean, other than being asked to join us on this podcast, have you considered it as being a loss, or something that you have lost and therefore must be grieved? Has it ever been considered in that sort of way?
No one's really asked me that before, apart from you guys, but it's kind of been my family. Obviously, my brother-in-law was kind of like, "You're going to get on the bike again?" My sister had just passed her test, and she was kind of wanting to go and ride with me too, but that was obviously brought to an abrupt end. But Yeah, apart from you guys, I've never really been asked, is it like a loss or anything? It's kind of just like, well, don't do it again because it's dangerous. You might kill yourself next time. I haven't really thought of it as a loss.
And that's a really hard thing. Something that we were talking about as we were sort of chatting and preparing for our meeting with you. That it adds another dimension, a complex dimension to a loss when you know that people around you are maybe pleased that you have that loss,
Yeah, yeah,
as opposed to joining you in it and saying we're sorry about that. That's quite tough, because there's such a deep love and a passion and enjoyment of it. To lose that as a hobby, as a mode of transport, taps into all the emotions, but to have people around you saying good,
yeah.
isn't helpful in that regard. So yeah, I feel for you in that sense.
Yep.
And no amount of, we would talk about like all change being loss, which is something new that we've come across with the podcast. And I think I'd never thought of it like that before, but I'm starting to realise more and more that if you love something and you enjoy it and it's taken away, it's a loss, and that loss will be grieved to a certain degree. Obviously, it varies depending on whether it's a person or a thing or a hobby. Have you found times when it's been harder than you thought, where it might not have been the decision, but actually when the weather got better, it suddenly felt harder at that point? Has there any been points then that you thought, actually, this is tricky, and I thought,
Yeah, over the summer. Obviously, I live in Northern Ireland. It's a big biking country. A lot of people are into their bikes. So it's kind of, when I had the bike, I would have went out with friends and went down to Newcastle and just did the whole, lap sort of thing with my friends and stuff. And now I kind of go out with my family, which I should have been doing anyway. But I obviously do that a lot more now. But it's kind of, going down the back road, seeing the motorbikes overtaken, thinking, oh man, that could have been me. I kind of want to do that again. But yeah, it gets you sometimes. My wife kind of looks at me and says, look away, don't be looking at the bikes. I'm itching to get on them again. But it's quite hard that way, I suppose.
yeah, I mean, you've got particularly a unique one in some ways than people we've spoken to before, because you've had to make the choice to lose it, which is difficult, because it's sort of sat there tempting you in some ways, because you think, oh, could I try it? But then in other ways, when you've got to make that decision for the good of other people, especially, that can be a hard thing, but no less difficult to go through personally. It's still something to be grieved. Would you say, like, if you were speaking to somebody else who was new in this decision or suddenly found themselves not being able to do it again, what would you say to someone like that?
Depends, what, to me it was a hobby, it was a love for the bikes, but I would kind of ask them, you have to look at the bigger picture, as I did. I'm not singling people out, but like young single guys, they don't have a family, and they're kind of, if something like that happens, they're kind of like, I'll be okay. I get a few stitches, I get a few metal bits in my body, I'll jump back on again. But yeah, if it happened to someone else I knew and it stopped them riding, yeah, I would just tell them, look at the bigger picture. Do you have to do this? I know you have a love for it and all, but and just look at your whole life just in like a map and see, is it worth getting back on? Is it going to affect other people? And I just had to kind of look at it from a different perspective, my family's perspective, my kids' perspective.
We touched on this earlier, that in your family circumstance, you didn't necessarily have the loving support as a motorcyclist. Whereas when I rode bikes, Claire would often say in conversations to people that, if something were to happen to Chris while he's doing it, then I would know that he was doing something he loved at the time. So that, that would bring her comfort, I think.
I said the same thing to my parents when they used to worry about us. I was like, look, if we both go while we're on the bike, we died doing something very happy. Don't worry about us. It was all good. They didn't take much comfort from that.
No.
But it was releasing for me to know that, I could be out with the support of my wife. How much of your decision to stop was just you selfishly, this is my decision?
As a percentage?
yeah, go on, as a percentage.
However vague you want to be.
I have thought about this. I would say probably 70% my wife and kids, 30% me, wanting to give it up. I would say I'm doing it more for them than myself. If I was a young single guy, I would have jumped on it, back on it, no problem.
So are you still clinging to much of your gear? Have you got rid of your clothing, helmets? Have you sold your two bikes?
All I have left is 2 paddock stands, a pair of gloves and a helmet. I have said to my wife, maybe when the kids get a bit older,
they could have one paddock stand each.
Yeah. So, yeah. I had 2 bikes. So one of the bikes was wrecked, and then the other one, The newer bike I give to a friend to sell for me, so he had sold that on behalf because I was in a wheelchair and I could hardly move. So
Are you keeping any of that stuff? Is it sentimental, or do you feel like you always want something in your life that's to do with bikes, even if it's just a glove?
I think, yeah, I kind of just want to keep it. Maybe one day, I don't know.
So do you feel overall, when you had to tell people what you've been through, and people have injuries and they generally get a lot of sympathy, a lot of empathy, did you feel that was less in any way because of how it had happened and because people do have this kind of view of bikes being dangerous?
Yeah, different people. It was kind of like I told you so, and then my family were supportive, but they were kind of like, it's a crotch rocket. Something bad's going to happen eventually. Yeah, it was about 50-50. People were saying you shouldn't have got on it. You're stupid. My family, they were very, very supportive. Like my wife was amazing. I couldn't even get a shower. She had to help me. Literally, she had to dress me. She had to do everything. So we had two kids, and then we had three. So yeah, it was difficult. That's probably another reason why it took me off the bike, because it was such a hard time. I was out of work for about 4 or 5 months, about 4 months. So yeah, it was difficult.
That must be hard because we've had people talk about losses where they say that people weren't very understanding what they've been through or they didn't know what to say. Like if someone's lost a child, we've had quite a few people say they didn't know what to say, so they avoided me. But you've got the opposite problem in that people feel overly confident in what to say, almost to the point of diminishing what you're going through and saying, I
Yeah.
told you so. That must be difficult. That must be hard to take at times.
Yeah, I kind of look at people saying that they don't really understand it. They don't understand the fun of riding, and they've never experienced it themselves. They just see road racers, and a lot of road racers die every year, and it's kind of just like a statistic. It becomes a statistic.
To come back to the idea of it being something to grieve the loss or something to mourn, I'm not sure what experiences you might have had. Lots you might have not had very much about mourning the loss of someone. How do you think what you've felt and experienced with the loss of the motorbiking could compare with the loss of someone?
So yeah, so if you lose someone, obviously you have a relationship with that person. Your once they're gone, your life is. But with a bike, as being a Christian, I would always put God first. So my dad always used to say to me, it's a hobby, it's a worldly item, so try and not to make it your God, if you know what I mean. So I kind of looked at it like that. It's kind of just a hobby, and I can get over it. And I suppose you can talk about getting over stuff all you want, but at the end of the day, you're the one with the feelings. You're the ones who's thinking about the loss and how it's affected you. So
I think sometimes if we've got something in us that we haven't processed, whether it is a grief of some description, and we've not identified it, acknowledged it, it starts to leak out. Sometimes we can wonder why we reacted to something in a way we did, or why something made us feel a bit defensive or emotional. Particularly, I think where you're just talking about sort of idols. If you have something in your life that you realise you idolise, and someone starts to poke at it. If I'd had a similar crash that ended my love of motorbiking or my ability to ride, I wasn't sharing with many people because they didn't understand that anytime somebody made a comment about, I told you, for saying something without giving it much thought, because for you still pretty fresh, really, sharply or whatever, that, oh crumbs, yeah.
Well, ever 100%.
Still be interested.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah. There's different ways you can do it. You can go to the races. You're never going to get the thrill of riding again, but yeah, I think it's okay to have that still. Obviously, the love, obviously I'm a big gamer too, so it's kind of shifted to that.
Because I know a lot of people that have got an interest in. I feel like it's easier to do that if you've never experienced being on one, because you can do it from a distance and know that it's never going to be something you'll ever pass. You're like, that's amazing, but most people aren't on them or don't know what it's like to then have a go at that. Do you think that transition will be something you can do quite easily, or do you think it will be difficult being that close to them and then not being able to feel that again?
Yeah, I think it'd be very difficult because, as I said, over the summer you see them drive past you down the back roads and stuff, and you're just kind of thinking, oh, I want to do that again so badly. But it is definitely hard. You just kind of try to focus on something else, sort of thing. So
yeah. And it's difficult. I don't want people to think we're trying to encourage you to get back on a bike.
Yeah, no.
But there is that kind of tension that you have to feel between, how am I going to deal with this? And it might be that if it is that difficult, again, it's something you revisit, and we've got things like that in our life. We revisit constantly and think, this is really hard. I need to just assess this and maybe just sit with it for a while and feel a bit rubbish about it, and then I'll pick myself up and move on again. But I think even acknowledging that it's hard, it just helps you as you're going forwards. Have you ever kind of asked the question with the accident and everything that happened? Have you ever dealt much with the why question? Why me? Why did that happen?
Yeah, I have. It goes over in my head quite a lot, thinking before I was going to see my mother and father that day, I was going to cut the hedge. So I was like, wow, I could have went and cut the hedge and I would have missed the whole thing. You know what I mean? So stupid things like that pop into your head, I suppose. But I'm not really someone that, why me, why not? I just kind of take life as it comes. I just take life as it happens. I don't really go around regretting things. I do them. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm kind of a laid back person. I kind of just, it happened, it happened. I'm not gonna, oh, why didn't I do this better? I thought it at the time and stuff, but no, maybe I'm too laid back for that. I don't know, but yeah.
If you were to say to a friend or sort of distant family member, they said, how are you doing? And you would say, oh, yeah, I'm up and down. I'm struggling a bit, sort of grieving the loss of my motorbikes. Do you feel like that's something that you could say with confidence, or would you feel embarrassed about offering something like that?
Yeah, probably more on the embarrassed side because, it's a man-made thing. They don't get the real thrill of it, especially talking to someone who has no idea about bikes. They would just say, oh, you've lost it, brush it on, go ahead, carry on with your life. And then you're sitting there like, yeah, but it affects me, but it would be hard to sort of say to someone about it. Yeah, I think I would find it hard, yeah.
Have any good things come out of, just strictly out of this? Have you identified any good things that have come out of this situation?
Yeah, I spend, like, the weekends I was off, I was usually out with the guys on the bikes. So now I'm a lot more time with the family. So that's a big positive. I have a car now, so I can take the kids with me. Obviously, because they're so young, they wouldn't get on a bike anyway. But I have the car now, and I feel more. I can do stuff with the kids now, and it's just it has helped me in different ways. And like bikes are an expensive hobby, especially with fuel prices what they are at the minute. And when I had the bike, I was always looking for the next. Oh, what bike can I get now? I'm saving up for another bike. I'm doing this, doing that. So it's kind of put my mind at rest that way, that I'm not thinking, what's the next hit, what's the next big bike I'm going to get sort of thing. So yeah, it's helped me that way. I don't have to think about that anymore because I was always, as I say, I was kind of addicted to looking at bikes on the internet, looking up specs, things about them and stuff. And that's kind of all came to rest.
Reached the last question. What's your Herman?
My Herman is look at the bigger picture. Bad things happen in life. You just got to take the pros and cons out of it, and yeah, look at the bigger picture. That's kind of my motto.
How many times do you have to remind yourself of that?
During the summer when I see the beach.
A healthy reminder for us that looking at the bigger picture can help us see other factors that need considering and other people in our lives and how things impact them too. It's very easy in our grief and loss to become completely introspective, which has its place but ultimately can give us a very narrow view of our situation. Thanks, Mark, for letting us explore the loss of your bikes and for being so honest about the challenges this loss can raise when talking to others about it.
If you're new to The Silent Why, you can find out more about who we are and why we do what we do on the website thesilentwhy.com, or search for The Silent Why Pod on social media.
This podcast is something I work on full-time, and probably the most enjoyable use of my time I've ever had, even though I do miss a paid job from time to time. And there are a few wonderful people who support me on buymeacoffee.com to make this possible. If you'd like to join them, that would make my day. Just head over to buymeacoffee.com/thesilentwhy to make a small, big, one-off or regular donation.
Now, there are so many great bike-related quotes we could have used at the end of this episode, such as, life is not about waiting for the storms to pass, it's about learning how to ride in the rain.
Or this from the late MotoGP racer Marco Simoncelli. You live more for 5 minutes going fast on a bike than other people do all their life.
Instead, we'll finish with this quote from Neil Peart.
When I'm riding my motorcycle, I'm glad to be alive. When I stop riding my motorcycle, I'm glad to be alive.